Hello there and welcome to The Open Road. I'm your host Megan, also known as Rootless Adventure Company. I am a full-time outdoor adventurer and creative entrepreneur on a mission to make every moment of this beautiful life count. As someone who has built a life around travel after leaving my hometown for the very first time at 18, I've learned that we can truly do anything we set our minds to in this lifetime. I help people just like you and I live a fulfilling life that prioritizes freedom, happiness, and our adventurous bucket lists. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing all about my recent trip to Baja, California, Mexico, where I spent 2 months in the spring road tripping around the peninsula with my boyfriend, George, and my dog, Shy. I will share with you the experiences that I got to check off my bucket list, my biggest takeaways from the trip, including mistakes that we made that you should avoid, and what is next on my bucket list. So let's get into it. Hello, my dear friends. Happy Thursday. I hope you are having a wonderful start to your week and that you have fun plans for the weekend. Welcome to the first solo video episode, by the way. I am now uploading these podcast episodes on YouTube, so you can catch video episodes on YouTube, and then you can still catch voice episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Whichever you prefer to listen to is totally up to you. I know I like to listen to on Spotify, but sometimes I also like to have the videos. Yeah, whatever you like, the podcast is available. So I just got back from spending 2 months in Mexico with my boyfriend and my dog, little sweet thing. And we were traveling around the Baja Peninsula. Let's catch up about the trip. How did this trip to Mexico even come about? Traveling around Baja has been on my bucket list for a very long time now. I have always wanted to go in the winter, one, like for the weather, and two, to go whale watching. That is another thing on my bucket list. And my boyfriend George, he had never been out of the country. This was a relatively first international trip, considering that it was within driving distance. That's what I wanted to do anyway because I love having Shy along. So yeah, I prefer to drive. I like having my home on wheels with me and my dog whenever I can. So it just kind of worked out that we both wanted to do this trip, and we definitely wanted to go on a big road trip together to see if we liked traveling together, obviously. So that's how the trip came about. We spent a lot of time saving and prepping for this trip. And then we headed out March 1st and spent about 7 days traveling to the Mexican border through the southwestern United States, stopping at some of our favorite places, Santa Fe and Sedona. So the first month that we were in Mexico, I took some time out of office. So we spent the first month traveling more so, and then the second month I went back in office. George had some things that he wanted to work on his computer as well, and so we decided to rent an apartment in La Paz for the second month, and we had more of a local experience in La Paz where we stayed in town, spent most of our time in the neighborhood, and then took a couple weekend trips from there. I'm not going to go too much into the specific things that we did on this road trip because I talked about that in my second episode, which is called Mexico Travels. So you can go listen to that episode if you want to hear the whole story of everything that we did during our time in Mexico. In this episode, I'm going to talk about like the best experiences, my biggest takeaways, the mistakes we made. But if you want to hear the story of everything we did, then you can go back and listen to it in that Mexico Travels episode. So I will start out by telling you the highlights of this trip, my favorite parts about this trip to Mexico. So both of us really, our favorite city that we visited, Cabo Pulmo National Park, is known for their snorkeling, and so we went there to go camping and snorkeling. We ended up booking our snorkel Cabo Pulmo travel. We had such a great experience with them. They took us around to a bunch of different spots. We got to go snorkeling with schools of fish and stingrays and sea lions and sea turtles and see a bunch of coral, and it was just so pretty and so fun. Yeah, had such a great experience, and we loved our campsite. It was so beautiful. It was definitely one of the best campsites I've ever stayed at, and we were there on a weekend. It was a very small town. It wasn't very busy, so I don't know. Not enough people are going to Cabo Pulmo. You should definitely check out Cabo Pulmo. It was by far our both George and I's favorite place in Baja. So that was definitely a highlight. Another highlight, my favorite part about Mexico was spending some time at Playa El Tecolote in La Paz. I got to get Shy on a paddleboard, which I love doing. Shy didn't grow up on the water. She grew up in the mountains. So water kind of scares her, although we did move to Florida after that and started spending a lot more time on the beach. So in the last few years, I've really been trying to get her in the water a lot more, and she is slowly but surely dipping her toes in, so love that. And Tecolote is just a really cool beach in La Paz. The more popular beach, I believe, is Balandra. That is a super crowded beach. It's only open at certain times of the day. It's got super beautiful blue turquoise water, but you can actually access it from Tecolote from a small hike if you want to. It's right next to it, but we really just had a good time on Tecolote, so I would highly recommend going there. There's good paddleboarding spots and lots of people to make friends with. I think a lot of the friends that we made in Mexico we met at Tecolote, so highly recommend Playa Tecolote in La Paz. My third favorite part about this trip to Mexico was when we went whale watching in Guerrero Negro. Like I said, every spring gray whales go to this bay in Guerrero Negro, about in Baja California, the Norte section, where they mate and have their babies, and it's so fun to go boating and see all these whales. They come up to the boat for pets, so I highly recommend going whale watching in Guerrero Negro, but it has to be at this time of year. Another favorite part about this trip to Mexico was when we stayed at Playa El Requesón. This was in an area called Bahia Concepcion. It's a popular bay. You have like beautiful views of the water, and we stayed at this beach on the water. It had a sandbar onto an island that you could walk out onto at certain times of the day, or you could go paddleboarding to it. There were lots of wonderful spots to go paddleboarding here. It was just a really peaceful night, really beautiful campsite, and it was definitely our favorite. So I highly recommending at least a night or two in this area of Bahia Concepcion on your way down to Baja California Sur. And yeah, make sure you camp there at Playa El Requesón. It's a lot of fun. So those were my favorite experiences that we had. Some of my favorite takeaways from Mexico as a whole. In Baja specifically, I love that you can just drive up to any beach pretty much and sleep there most of the time for free, if not for like 200 pesos was generally what we paid if we did have to pay, which is only like 10 to 12 US dollars. So not expensive to sleep on the beach, and it's so easy and accessible. There's really only a couple places I know of in the US where you can even sleep directly on the beach at all, and it's definitely expensive. It's definitely crowded. So I really love that part about Baja. It's such a cool culture. That's such a unique thing that you can do. Where you turn in Baja is just gorgeous. Yeah, I just thought it was such a beautiful place, and I'm so glad that we got to spend so much time really soaking up the beauty. It was really great. I also love how Mexican communities really get together. When we were staying in La Paz, we would go to the beach for sunset a lot. We only lived a couple blocks away from the beach, and so we would always go there for sunset, and we would see families that brought a whole dinner table and tablecloth, and we're just cooking dinner and enjoying the sunset and just talking to one another. And you would always see people hanging out together and doing things as a group or as a family. You rarely would see just like one or two people on their own. And everybody's so friendly. People talk to each other. Everybody helps out their neighbors and cares about one another. At least that was our experience. What experiences did I get to check off my bucket list in Mexico? Number one, spending a season road tripping around Baja. Like I said, spending a whole season in Baja has definitely been on my bucket list. I really wanted to go for a long time when I did finally get to go, and I'm glad that I did. Who I got to check off going on a road trip with a significant other. I have not done that before. This was the first time that I traveled with a boyfriend. So yeah, that was a lot of fun and a new experience that I got to check off my bucket list. 3 was whale watching. Like I said, this item has been on my bucket list for a long time. And 4, have Shy get in the water willingly. I think it's funny that that's on my bucket list. But yeah, Shy, like I said, doesn't like to go swimming. So I've been doing my best to get her comfortable with the water. And so it was on my bucket list to just like turn around one day and like catch her getting in the water on her own without me like asking her to. And I finally caught that at Tecolote. So yeah, I was really excited about that. Honey, you are gonna destroy your Shy is sitting right next to me and she's being so cute and sweet. What experiences did I not get to check off of my bucket list on this trip? 1, swim with whale sharks. In La Paz, you can go swimming with whale sharks. That's kind of a popular thing to do there, and that is something that we didn't get to do that I really hope we get to do in the future. We didn't make the effort to plan this adventure, so that's how that didn't happen, but that's okay. We can always do it in the future. ATV riding in Baja or dirt bike riding. There's so many dirt bike trails, and I see ATVs all the time, so it's definitely a place to do that, and we definitely will go back in the future to ride ATVs in Baja. That would be super fun. Or go dirt bike riding. George rides motorcycles, so he's more interested in the dirt bike aspect. I'm not really sure what I'm interested in. I've gone mountain biking, I like off-roading, but yeah, I've never driven an ATV. That is on my bucket list, and so is dirt biking. I've never done either of those things, but they're both on my bucket list, so I'm down with either, and I just think that Baja would be a great place to do it. There's only one city that we didn't make it to that was on my bucket list during this trip, which was Cabo San Lucas and San Jose del Cabo. I know that's the most popular tourist town. It is all the way at the very bottom of the peninsula, though. So from our perspective, it was at the very end of our road trip. By the time I needed to be back in office, we just simply didn't make it there. And I don't always love traveling in cities with Shy anyways, and with all of our stuff. It's also a major city, so there's a direct airport to it. So the way I saw it, it just wasn't going to work out for this trip. It just wasn't ideal. So I thought it would be better if I just like take a flight and spend a weekend in Cabo at some point in my life. I'm sure I will do that and it would be easy. But yeah, on this trip, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. What were my least favorite parts of our trip to Baja, Mexico? Really, the biggest thing was just that it was hard to connect with people because we didn't speak the language. We eventually learned enough to like get around and ask for like things that we need, like order in a restaurant and whatnot. But we definitely weren't having conversations with locals in Spanish. So unless people knew English pretty well, then we couldn't really connect deeper with them, which sucks because, like I said, Mexican people were so nice and fun. We did hang out at like this local skate park on the Malecon on the water and made a lot of friends there, but again, we were just limited to people who spoke English. So yeah, if I ever go back to Baja, I definitely want to try to learn a little more Spanish so that I can have better conversations with people. What were the mistakes that we made on this trip? Me personally, I really need to learn how to have a better work-life balance sometimes, because I think when you are traveling and working at the same time, it can be really hard to have that work-life balance. I think I just need to remember when to put the computer down and just go watch the sunset, even if it's just like a quick adventure. You know how like going to the beach, it can either like a super quick event or it could be an all-day affair. I wish I would have just went to the beach as a quick event a lot more, like just the close by area. Towards the end of our stay, we definitely got really good at like I would go journal on the beach in the morning, and we would always go for a sunset walk at night towards the end. But there was just that time in the middle where we just like, I don't know, I guess we were just really tired, but I just wish we would have made a little bit more out of that time. The other thing is, I honestly feel like we spent way too much money on this trip. I think it seems like we spent more money on this trip because I'd always heard that Mexico is cheap. And so I think I spent pretty similar to what I would spend during a trip to like California in the United States, or like Vancouver, like definitely the more expensive areas. So bear that in mind. I think a lot of that reason was because our highest expense was gas, and gas prices are very high in Baja. Filling up one tank of gas would cost like $100 US. Seriously. And I drive a gas guzzler, so that did not last us very long. So yeah, we spent a lot of money on gas. Gas was definitely our highest expense. Maybe let me go through and break down the expenses a little bit, because I am a budget girly and I always look at my expenses after every trip, and I think it would be beneficial to share with you. But yeah, gas was definitely our highest expense. Like I said, we would spend around $100 a tank on gas. I don't remember exactly what it was in pesos, but I do have a conversion saved in my phone that gas was over $7 a gallon. So I don't know what that is in liters or pesos, but it's over $7 a gallon for gas. Definitely didn't expect that, and I think that is the biggest reason. That's the biggest reason why we ended up renting a place, because let's talk about rent. So our rent for 1 month to stay in a studio apartment in La Paz that was about 3 blocks from the beach and less than a 10-minute drive to downtown. We paid $575 in rent for this month to stay in this apartment, and it ended up being about $670 after utilities. It was definitely a cute area, a good location. It was a good apartment. It was clean. It wasn't the nicest per se as far as like amenities go. Like our kitchen, we didn't have like a stove or an oven. We just had like a 2 burner hot plate that sat on the counter and plugged into the wall, and didn't really work that well. We didn't have hot water in our shower. So take that into consideration I'm just painting a picture of what the living situation looked like. We were comfortable for the month that we stayed there. Would I have stayed there for a whole summer not having a hot shower or like a real kitchen? Probably not. But for the small time that we were there, it definitely checked all our boxes. Once we all that we were spending on gas and the cost of rent, it definitely was cheaper for us to rent. So there were some other studio apartments that were across the street from us, and those were running about $1,500 a night. So I think if we wanted amenities like a full kitchen and hot water and whatnot, I think that would have run us closer to about $1,500, which I've spent more, I've spent less on apartments in different cities. Whether that's a lot or a little is very subjective to you. I've lived in places that both cost more and less for a studio. When it came to food, here's our food expenses. So when we went to the grocery store, we generally spent about $70 per person per week. We cooked a lot of our food at home. We would go out every so often. When we did go out to eat, so I would say that food, there were some places where you could get a meal for about $10 per person. For the most part, I would say that a meal was between 15 and 20 per person. Or it was like 40 or $150 if we were drinking, which we didn't do very often. Drinks are definitely much cheaper in Mexico than in the US, like alcohol. But we weren't going out and drinking super often, so I would say in general our total bill was around $15 to $25 per person if we were going out to eat, which I would say is very similar to how much it is in the United States. Camping, I generally stay at free campsites everywhere I travel, no matter the country. Mexico is no different. I will say though, if you do have to pay to camp where you want to camp, it's very similar to like Canadian or European prices, where it's more like 10 to 15 US a night. Like I said, it was about 200 pesos when we did pay to camp. So yeah, if it wasn't free, it was pretty cheap. Which in the United States, I would say that camping, if it's not free, it's definitely more expensive than that. I don't often pay for campgrounds, but when I do, it's closer to $30 to $70 a night, to the point where sometimes it's not even worth it. So, yeah, bear that in mind. There's no way you could drive up to a beach that beautiful and camp there for only $10 in the United States. It's simply just not going to happen. Yeah, camping definitely didn't break the bank. Overall, I feel like the cost of everything was similar to what we spend in the United States, and gas was significantly more expensive. So I think that definitely contributed to why Mexico was definitely more expensive than we expected it to be. So what were my biggest takeaways from this trip to Mexico? Honestly, it's to get off my phone so much and quit taking things so seriously, to really focus on the community that's around me and cherish the time that I get with those people. You will not see Mexican people scrolling on their phones and stressing about views on Instagram, you know what I mean? Like, they're out there enjoying the sunset with their family every night, and that's what matters. They're on the beach every second they can be, just having a good time with their friends. So I definitely want to take that away, to be a good neighbor and yeah, spend time with people while I have them around me, because community really helps you feel less lonely in this world. So yeah, I just want to make sure that I am pouring into the relationships in my life as much as I feel the love coming from them. My second biggest takeaway is to just freaking do it, y'all. There were so many things we were scared of before this trip to Mexico that I think a lot of people fear when they go to Mexico. Everybody was telling us that it's unsafe. You know, every country has their safety risks. I've certainly felt unsafe in the United States plenty of times, and other countries as well. Mexico, the beautiful parts of it certainly outweigh the dangers, in my opinion. There's safety risks anytime you travel and anytime you leave the house, and Mexico's no different. So you just need to make sure you're being smart and going with your gut if you feel making sure that you have safety precautions planned, and hopefully you will have the same experience where you enjoy all the beautiful parts of Mexico. But yeah, just freaking do the things that are on your bucket list, whether it's going to Mexico or not. You will never regret going after something that was on your bucket list, you know, something that is one of your deepest desires in this life. You'll never regret just going for something that your gut told you was right. So now that we are back from Mexico, what is next on my bucket list for the summer? I've had all of my previous guests share specific items on their bucket lists. So in this episode, I wanted to share some things that I will be checking off my bucket list this summer. I have two types of bucket lists. I have one like main overall physical bucket list for my life, and then I like to make a bucket list every season. My best friend in Colorado and I started doing this in 2020, where we would make like a summer bucket list and then a fall bucket list and then a winter bucket list. And I really liked doing that because, I mean, I do that for all my goals anyway. You know, like if you have business goals, you break them down by like 5 years, 1 year, and quarterly, even like monthly and weekly, daily, all the things. For my bucket list, I don't go that crazy. I just have my physical bucket list, and then every season I like to think about what I'm doing, what my plans are, and what I can check off of my bucket list that season. maybe I'll start sharing my bucket list with you every season when I make it. It's early May, so this is the time when I made my summer bucket list. So yeah, I would encourage you actually to make a summer bucket list too, and we can keep each other accountable on our seasonal bucket lists. Comment on this episode and let me know what is on your summer bucket list. I would love to know, and I will share some things with you. So here's the thing. When we left for Mexico, we quit our jobs and packed up all our stuff, and we didn't honestly know how long we would be gone because we truly had no idea what we wanted to do after Mexico. And by the time it got time to leave, we honestly still really didn't know what we wanted to do. But my twin brother called and needed some help in Boston during the month of May. So that's when we decided that we would come home because I needed to spend some time in the East, and George wanted to pick up some shifts at the restaurant that we work at home to make a little money while I was in Boston, and then we would figure out what we wanted to do next after that. And we've been between a few things. I think we're really settled on the idea that we want to move to California. We knew that we wanted to move somewhere in the West, and we've played around with so many different ideas in the West. And I think within the last couple weeks or so, we've definitely both really solidified that we love California. So now it's more so, I think, a matter of putting the pieces together to move to California, which I just don't think are going to come together in a day or a week. We'll see what happens, or how that comes about. But yeah, I want to make sure that whatever we do it right instead of rushed. We'll see what happens, but here are some things that I want to check off my bucket list this summer. I moved to California is on that list. I hope that is something that we get to check off. If we do, there is a hike that I really want to do, the Tahoe Rim Trail. I want to go on at least 2 backpacking trips this summer. I would really like to check off the rest of the continental United States this summer. There's only a couple US states that I have not been to yet. I have not been to Hawaii and Alaska, and I do definitely want to go to, but if I can at least finish the continental US this summer, that would be really fun. I only have Arkansas and Oregon left. So just 2 states left of the continental US, and I hope that I can get those 2 checked off. I want to go on a helicopter ride. I think I have a plan for this. And one of my friends is a helicopter instructor, and he travels a lot, so it just matters on if we're in the same place at the same time. But I think we have finally lined it up to where I can finally go on a helicopter ride, so that'll be super fun. That's something I want to check off my bucket list this summer. At the end of the summer, I would really like to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. I keep talking about this with a few different friends, and it just never ends up getting set in stone, but the timing always has to work out. But I really want to do that as my next sort of hiking challenge. I think that would be super fun to hike Kilimanjaro in August or September. But I also, again, I don't know what I'll be up to around that time. I would like to visit Devin in Europe, my twin. So I'm going to Boston to help him move. He's going to be a guest. Actually, yeah, we're going to do a 2-part twin episode that's going to come out in a couple of weeks while we are in Boston together. If you have been around for a long time, you know my twin brother. If you have only been around the last couple of years, you haven't seen as much of him. He spent a lot of time in Europe doing an internship after his undergrad, and then he moved to Boston for grad school 2 years ago. So over the last 2.5 years, he's just been really busy. Devin, he also is a traveler. He just finished a master's degree. He studies international political conflict, specifically in the Balkans. So he will be moving to Serbia for the next full year. So that is why visiting Devin in Europe is on my bucket list. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the summer and catching up with you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye. That is all I have for you today. I hope you gained some courage or confidence or learned something new today. If you liked this episode, be sure to rate it 5 stars or leave a review. It would really help me out. And make sure you follow the show at the Open Road Podcast so you never miss an episode. We are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and Instagram, all at the Open Road Podcast. Lastly, don't forget to make every moment of this beautiful life count. See you Thursday.